Welcome to the Volpe Report podcast, the state's premier public affairs show dedicated to the topics that matter most to Pennsylvanians. I'm your host, Chuck Volpe. Join us now as we speak to this week's guest.
The following half-hour show is a paid political program and is not endorsed by this station, management, or staff.
The following program is brought to you by Excalibur Insurance Management Services.
We welcome to today's show two eminently qualified candidates for the appellate courts of Pennsylvania. First, attorney Maria Battista for Judge of the Superior Court of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And second, attorney Matthew Wolford for Judge of the Commonwealth Court of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. They both run as Republican nominees for those high courts. Maria's qualifications for the Superior Court, which is the court responsible for appeals of all criminal cases, as well as a lot of civil cases, including those involving family and children, are as follows. As you will hear from Maria on the show, she has actually 5 degrees, 3 of which are in elementary education, including a rare thing, 2 doctorates, otherwise known as PhDs. Her first doctorate is a doctorate of education from the University of Pittsburgh. Her second doctorate is a doctor of philosophy from Duquesne University, also in Pittsburgh. Maria has a master's of education from Westminster College. And obviously, as a lawyer, she has a Juris Doctorate degree from Ohio Northern University School of Law. I almost forgot to mention her undergraduate degree, a bachelor's degree, is from Clarion University. Maria is committed to interpreting the laws as written and keeping partisan politics out of her courtroom. Her qualifications speak well for her special expertise in family law matters and especially children's cases. Our second guest, attorney Matthew Wolford, is a proud graduate of We Are Pennsylvania State University, where he received his Bachelor of Arts in English. From there, Matt went on to Temple University School of Law, achieving his Juris Doctorate. He has served as a counsel for the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, as well as a prosecutor as a Pennsylvania Deputy Attorney General, prosecuting crimes in the Environmental Crime Section, where he was attorney in charge of their regional field office. Matt is a past chair of the Pennsylvania Bar Association Environmental and Energy Section and is a regular guest lecturer for the Pennsylvania Bar Institute on environmental and ethics topics. They will make their case on today's show.
This is the Volpe Report, a weekly news and political interview show examining the latest local, state, and national issues with Chuck Volpe. Insightful, informative, controversial. The area's premier political talk show, the Volpe Report.
Maria and Matt, welcome to the Volpe Report.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Of course, as we had talked briefly before we started taping, Matt is a veteran of the show. He was on the show earlier before the May primary, and congratulations. Maria, you were not, but you won for a different office. Congratulations. And I think, as we've talked about, judicial races don't tend to be the kind of item like that people get, like the voters, in often cases don't know a lot about the candidates. So this is your chance, I think, to we'll talk about the differences in the court's jurisdictions, but more importantly about who you are and who they'd be voting for. So let me start with you, Maria, because Matt has already been on the show. We'll get to him in a second. You're a candidate, and congratulations as you won the primary for the Superior Court of Pennsylvania. As I had mentioned to you, that's kind of a favorite court of mine, because I clerked there as a young guy over 40 years ago. That's how long ago. But having said that, the Superior Court, and then I'll turn it over to you, Maria, having been there, I know, that is the court that handles a significant volume of cases. In fact, for our viewers' benefit, the Commonwealth Court wasn't always here. The Commonwealth Court came about in the 70s because at some point, having to do all of the cases that were coming up on appeal from trial courts, it was overwhelming. So they broke it off, and we'll get to Commonwealth Court and Matt in a second. But the Superior Court still handles all appeals that are, and you get a right of appeal to the Superior Court automatically. All criminal cases, of course, automatically go up in criminal convictions or the like. So you have extensive jurisdiction. The one thing you don't get, which is a lot, anything involving a local government, a municipality, a city, a county, a zoning board, a workers' compensation appeal board, anything involving the state government, all appeals that involve a governmental entity, that gets the Matt's jurisdiction in the Commonwealth Court, which we will get to again in a second. So that's what the Superior Court does. So let's talk a little bit about you and your qualifications and your background and why you want to be a Superior Court judge.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. And, I have a very diverse background that suits very well to be a judge on the Superior Court. As as a clerk to that court, the largest body of law to the Superior Court are criminal cases, and that's about 60% of the caseload. To my knowledge, I'm the only former prosecutor, so I've worked very closely with law enforcement. People want to keep their community safe. We've seen so much in the news about some of our law enforcement that have been injured, who had passed away from their injuries in York County. More recently, we've seen some other violence, and people don't even realize that there are 15 judges on this court, and it's random what 3 judges you're going to get to review those cases when they go up on appeal. So it's really important that they look at the candidate, who they are as a person, what their background is in the law, and would they make those fair and impartial decisions without bias or prejudice and keeping politics out of the courtroom. Again, I believe I'm the only former prosecutor or anyone that practiced criminal law in the private practice. In addition, I hail from northwestern Pennsylvania, from Clarion County. It's a very rural county, and much of Pennsylvania is rural. There are no sitting judges. Of the 15 judges, 14 right now sitting, 1 vacancy from a rural county. Most are from Allegheny and Philadelphia, those collar counties. One's from Cumberland County. So I bring geographic diversity to the court. And I've also done many of the types of civil cases that go to the Superior Court. When I was doing a general practice, as a private practitioner in a rural county, you're doing all types of law. So I was doing the family matters, whether that's child custody, divorce, adoption, and so many other types of family issues. I was doing the real estate. In fact, I was an abstractor for a summer for oil and gas before I went to law school, and my mom was an abstractor for oil and gas for a law firm for many years. So I have a background. So even though and Matt will talk about that with his background when it's related to a government agency, still many of the cases involving property issues or those involving contracts or leases or whatever the case might be, they go to the Superior Court. I've done those types of cases as a private practitioner. I've also done the business law, the state, and I even did, when I first started, insurance defense, and then some personal injury. Again, those are broad categories, but those broad categories are what are the types of appeals from your court of common pleas in your county and all of the other 66 counties, that if it's appealed, it goes to the Superior Court. And in about 97% of cases, they become final. They become final in the Superior Court. They don't go to our highest court.
Right.
And people then say to me, well, Maria, that's okay and fine, but I don't ever see myself being a party to an action. Well, the thing is, you don't have to be a party to an action in these decisions because they impact us every single day. I've had some district attorneys that said to me in the last month and a half, did you know that this decision just came down from the Superior Court on one of these panels of 3, and it impacts my ability to do my job effectively and to advise law enforcement to do their job? So it is important, because even if you're never a party, those decisions in those 97% approximately cases become, the precedent. And so it is very, very important. And so I have the criminal and the civil background. The other thing that's very unique about my background, by the way, not required to be a judge on the Superior Court, is that I have 5 degrees. I have 2 bachelors, and one is in speech communication. The other is in elementary education. I taught in the K through 12 education setting, as did my sister and my father and my mother. I also have a master's in education and a doctorate in education. I've dealt with children with special needs and autism. And, if we've listened to anything from U.S. Secretary Kennedy, 1 in 12 boys today have or are on the autism spectrum disorder. Many
Sure.
children have special needs, and these children are in our court system. And they now have something called autism in the courts. It happened with our former Chief Justice on the Supreme Court because of the increase in the number of children and judges at the Court of Common Pleas level, right below the Superior Court, not knowing really how to handle those types of cases when they're dealing with the children when they see them in person. I can bring that knowledge, that additional knowledge. I won't say expertise, but I certainly can bring that additional knowledge to the Superior Court when I'm on one of those panels of 3 if I'm assigned one of those cases. And I can also be one of those faculty members for continuing legal education to help the judges in the Court of Common Pleas. I've been a faculty member for a number of CLEs in mediation, some for oral arguments before the appellate court, and also in healthcare matters. But I can do the same when we're dealing with the best interest of the child. And no one wants to play Russian roulette with their children, their families, their property. But that's what's essentially happening because they don't know what 3 judges they're going to get to sign. And the other thing is I had the fortune and honor and privilege to serve under 2 governors as a lawyer. So even though I live in northwestern Pennsylvania, for about a decade, I was living during the week in the Harrisburg, Camp Hill area. And so I served in the Department of Health as a lawyer, and I was overseeing home care, home health care, hospices, birth centers, dialysis centers, as well as the Drug Device Cosmetic Act. And I worked in joint jurisdiction with the Office of Attorney General Healthcare Section. The most important thing of all of that is the Drug Device and Cosmetic Act that our law enforcement use all the time.
Right.
And then I went into the Department of State. Now, these are government agencies. So if the decisions of these agencies are appealed, they would go to MAT court, the government court.
Right.
But the important thing is I was a hearing examiner. And in some other agencies, a hearing examiner is called administrative law judge. And we not only did professional licensure hearings, we also did hearings for most of the outside agencies, whether it's Department of Health, Department of Corrections, Department of Probation, Parole, Department of Agriculture, all of these different agencies. And if those decisions were appealed, and some were very complex, the personal injury actions, especially the medical malpractice cases, there might be a licensing issue that would go to the Commonwealth Court for MAT, but then the underlying civil action, if people sued because they felt there was, an injury to a person when they went to get a surgery, guess where that went? That went to the Superior Court.
Sure.
And so those cases are very difficult cases. The decisions that you write are very thoughtful, very detailed, and if appealed, the licensing one would go to the Commonwealth and the other one would go to the Superior. And so I have the background like a judge, but as called a hearing examiner. The key difference is it's administrative law. It's not the criminal and civil, and you don't have jury trials, but the same skill sets I have them. So I'm the most well-rounded, and I have that additional benefit of having a background with children and children with special needs.
Sure.
And the second largest body of law to the Superior Court are those involving families and children.
Well, Judge, I'm already calling you Judge, Counselor Maria. That was a wonderful background of your extensive and pervasive qualifications. And I'll also say that you're not an expert. I would disagree with your interpretation of based on your not only your educational credentials with children, especially special needs and autism. I'm pretty sure as an old trial lawyer, I'd get you qualified as an expert in a court of law. So then you were fit. I'll bestow that on you. Matt, turning to you.
Yes.
You have been on this show, but as you know, in trial tactics, as I'm sure you guys took and know, the 2 things they teach you about primacy and recency. The jurors tend to remember what they hear first and what they hear last. So even though you were here months ago, then we'll call that the primacy part. Now we're going to go with the recency part to refresh everybody's recollection. They've already heard your tremendous credentials. But the Commonwealth Court is such a unique jurisdictional court. As Maria has very well stated, the governmental court is a good way to call it. Anything involving a government at any level, from the municipal level to the city level to the county level to the state, all of that is before you. So an extensive body of work yourself. Your qualifications, I will point out for our viewers that as we talked off camera, we both have a relationship with Governor Ridge, former Governor Ridge. You, because you worked in his administration, Me, because I was a Democratic candidate against him in the governor's race in '94, actually not directly against him. I lost to Mark Singal in the Democratic primary. Mark Singal went on to lose to him in the general election. But having said that, let's remind folks that, you know, right at the top of the list of your tremendous qualifications, Matt, is that you worked for the Department of Environmental Protection. And
right.
Environmental issues are extremely significant. You run, obviously, on the Republican side because for some reason our political system keeps politics in judicial races. You run on the Republican side. But if I had to describe which party is more aggressively concerned with environmental issues, that would be the Democratic side. And I'm sure your credentials might actually appeal to a whole bunch of Democratic voters because you were involved in the Environmental Protection Agency of Pennsylvania. And then you went on to be basically a criminal prosecutor of sort for the Attorney General. You were a Deputy Attorney General of Pennsylvania. And your specific charge was environmental crimes and prosecution of environmental crimes. So talk a little bit about that, because those, among all the other things, gives you just exceptional qualifications for Commonwealth Court.
Yeah. So what I'm finding out as I go around the Commonwealth that perhaps my two greatest qualifications are that I wrestled in high school and that I went to Penn State.
Touche. Touche.
Right. I went, and I enjoyed wrestling. It's a great sport, by the way. I went to Temple Law School. I learned how to litigate cases in Philadelphia, civil litigation, working for the Attorney General's Office, Courts Litigation Section. What they do is they defend PennDOT, which requires a lot of effort, as you can imagine. Also, state police, Department of Health, any state agency that gets sued for personal injury, that's what that unit does. And then I did take a transfer to Western Pennsylvania, Meadville, Pennsylvania, and became an environmental crimes prosecutor. And what I did is prosecute. I was a state prosecutor, specifically focused on environmental crime. And the reason I was in Meadville is because that's where the DEP's regional office was. And so I was working the same territory, which is about 12 or 13 counties in Northwest Pennsylvania. Although I also got down in the Pittsburgh area from time to time. I was in Westmoreland County and some other places. So I became interested in the environmental aspects of what I was doing. And so I went to what was then the DEP, or actually it started as DER and became the DEP under the Ridge administration.
Right.
And we were working on trying to show everyone, and I think we were successful. He brought over Jim Seif from Region 3, that you can protect the environment and not destroy the economy at the same time. And we did a lot of that in the 90s, and we were successful. And so, and the thing about environmental laws, that even though I'm on the opposite side now, you have to comply with the law. And in fact, I had an oil and gas former program manager who came up to me at a festival recently. I hadn't seen him in like 5 years. He said, the one thing that we always appreciated about you is that you told your clients, no matter what else, you have to comply with the law. I mean, that's what the General Assembly established as a requirement. So you can't get around it. It's how you comply with the law that can either keep you in business or put you out of business. So how that became relevant, I left the government agency work about 25 years ago. I'm in private practice. I represent individuals, businesses, farmers, landowners, oil and gas companies, anybody in the regulated community, manufacturers, that sort of thing. And what I help them do is comply with the law in a way that is amenable to staying in business. And just like we were doing in the 90s on the other side, I'm doing it now, for the private sector. So it's been a good practice for me, and it raises issues that come before the Commonwealth Court a lot. So let's talk about the Commonwealth Court a little bit. So as you've outlined, it's a government court. It's a highly specialized government court. It deals with state and local government issues. And although people don't think of it as a criminal court, they actually do some crimes. They do environmental crimes, for example. Those went up to the Commonwealth Court. They do fish and boat code crimes, Fourth Amendment issues, and can the Fish and Boat Commission just search your boat without a warrant, that sort of thing. They do game commission cases, and so can the game commissioners just or the inspectors walk in your garage without a warrant. So they handle those kinds of Fourth Amendment cases and some other criminal cases too, but the vast majority is more administrative type law, the kinds of things I was doing. Civil and administrative, right? So that's what I was doing at the DEP is, working with rulemaking, regulations, all that sort of stuff. And my trial court is not the Court of Common Pleas doing environmental work. It's the Environmental Hearing Board. And basically it's a non-jury trial setting. But it's a regular trial. They follow the same rules as, Court of Common Pleas. And those cases then go to the Commonwealth Court. I'm actually on the Environmental Hearing Board Rules Committee. They figure I got so many cases in front of them, I might as well help them figure out how to do the rule. And so I've been doing that for at least 10 years. And so the Commonwealth Court is critically important. I don't think people appreciate how important it is. Although, you might have a zoning case, but what the zoning is about might be the Second Amendment.
Right.
Right. I mean, so that's obviously very important. It sounds like a boring zoning case, but it's actually about Second Amendment protection. And those kinds of cases come before the court all the time. And so, if you think about how regulated we are in Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth Court judges are the gatekeepers. What is a regulation? Regulation is the government saying you can do something or you cannot do something. It's the antithesis of personal freedoms and private property rights. And what made this country great are personal freedoms and private property rights. That's how we developed our country, because people are harnessing their self-interest. And so when the government comes along and says, well, you can do this or you can't do that, they're interfering with our personal freedoms and private property. And this is the balance of the Ridge administration that we were talking about. So a certain amount of government's good. We want good roads. We want fire protection. We want police protection. We want clean air, and we want clean water. But when the government goes too far, when they overreach, when they overregulate, this court, the judges on this court, are the gatekeepers of our personal freedoms and private property rights. And that's why it's so critical that we have somebody that understands that has common sense on this court.
Well, again said, Matt. A great description. As I said earlier, we're going to take a quick break and come back because we've taken obviously a lot of time. The half hour, Matt knows, Maria, flies by. And we're going to come back to kind of get almost a closing statement. As lawyers, you've made the closing arguments before. Well, you're going to have a jury that involves millions right now. So we'll take this quick break. We'll be right back.
There are more places you can see the Volpe Report. Watch every Sunday morning at 10:30 on Fox 56 or watch on YouTube at the Volpe Report. More ways to watch. Still the same premier political talk show dedicated to the topics that matter most to Pennsylvanians.
Welcome back, guys. And now, as I had said, we have a few minutes left each for you guys to effectively make your closing argument to the voters of Pennsylvania in this media market. So we'll start with you, Maria. You're a candidate for the Superior Court of Pennsylvania. You've well described the duties and responsibilities, the jurisdiction of that court, and your specific background. Why should they vote for you for Superior Court?
The Superior Court is the people's court, and it impacts their lives every single day. I have done those types of law in my practice, and people want to know a little bit about you as a person too, not just your practice. And, I come from 2 generations of military family. My father served in World War II, the Battle of the Bulge. My brother served as a colonel in the Air Force. I had to resign from the Navy. Now, they served active duty. I did not, but I served as a civilian and a contracting officer in the weapon systems support for both submarines, carrier ships, cruisers, and destroyers. And I had to resign from that position in order to run in 2023. I came very close to winning statewide. I came in first place in 52 of 67 counties. And I do encourage our listeners here to also consider a mail-in ballot. There's no downside for that. The last day to request one is October 28th. If they don't use it, they can still go to the polls and relinquish it, and they have it in an emergency as a plan B. And there's also some things that people really want to know. They want to know that they keep politics out of the courtroom. I didn't do this because of politics. I did this because of what I saw that happened in Luzerne County over, almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it broke. I put on a statewide legal symposium about the courts as protectors of children. Sandra Schultz-Newman was in my program, as was Victor Stabile, who's on the Superior Court. And she says, Maria, why aren't you running for judge? This was 15 years ago. And I said, I didn't do it for that reason. I wanted to give a voice to the voiceless. So many children's lives, over 5,000 were impacted. Some committed suicide. And I finally made the commitment to run for judge in 2023. And this time we're going to get over the finish line with the help of your listeners. I am the right choice at the right time with the right experience. And with their help, it's going to be one team, one fight to get one more judge on this court that's going to do what's right in every single case so there is justice for all.
Well stated, Maria. Matt, you've made one of these closing arguments already, and you get to do it again. And why should they vote for you for the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania?
Okay. Well, thank you for this opportunity. Appreciate it. What I've found out from going all over the Commonwealth, and it is a big Commonwealth. I have one county left, which I'm going to be getting to here shortly, is that although there are regional differences throughout the Commonwealth, everybody to a person that I talk to wants good judges on our and what they believe and what I believe is meant by that is that judges who respect the rule of law. That means upholding the Constitution, following statutes as written, and not legislating from the bench. If you look at my career, I've been in front of the Commonwealth Court since the beginning of my career. My first appeal was in 1988.
Wow.
I have state agency, and I have one in front of the court now. So and I've had numerous cases between then and now.
That's 37 years for our voters.
Yeah, it's not 38, but who's counting?
Touche.
But, yeah, thanks. So this court, as I explained, the judges are the gatekeepers of our personal freedoms and private property. And I understand that because I've been in front of this court so many times and I've seen this play out. And I have relevant state agency experience, both with the Attorney General's office and also with the Environmental Protection Department, to understand how this court handles those cases. They become administrative in nature, mostly. Some are criminal, but very few. So I understand that. My opponent, as far as I know, lacked any state agency experience. So it's not just having experience, it's having relevant experience. And I have relevant experience. And I would just say that in addition to that, this is why I was endorsed or highly recommended by the Pennsylvania Bar Association. I've been endorsed by law enforcement agencies, the Latino community, and others. And so, as Maria said, it's all about getting, everybody says that this is a off-year election. Well, it's not off-year for us. We have an election coming up very shortly. And the only way we're going to win and sort of overcome the large municipal areas like Philadelphia is for people to come out and vote. And so that's what we need people to do, is to get energized, to come out and vote. Because if you care about your personal freedoms and private property rights being protected in front of the Commonwealth Court, you need someone like me on this court. You need a judge like me on this court. The only way we're going to do that is if people come out and vote. So thank you very much, and I humbly request everyone to vote.
Well, thank you so much, both Maria and Matt. I think you are two wonderful candidates, and you made a very wonderful, eloquent case as to why people should vote for you. So I wish you nothing but the best. Good luck, Godspeed, and hopefully we'll talk in your new capacity in the future, and I'll be referring to as your honors. So thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity to be with you and your listeners.
Very welcome, Maria. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Volpe Report podcast. Be sure to visit our YouTube and Facebook pages for upcoming episodes. You can catch up on the Volpe Report podcast on your favorite podcast provider.